Swearing-in event of Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan following an election marred by violent protests and rejected by the opposition as a sham. The inauguration ceremony was held at a military parade grounds in the capital Dodoma instead of a stadium as in previous years. It is closed to the public, but it is being shown on state TV. Samia was declared the winner on Saturday with 98% of the vote. International observers have raised concerns about the transparency of the election and its violent aftermath, with hundreds of people reportedly killed. Tabiso Lehoko has more.
President Samia Suluhu's swearing-in took place under heavy security, with the public barred from attending. Only a limited number of local and international dignitaries were invited, while many Tanzanians have followed the event on state televisions amid an internet blackout as she begins a new term. President Suluhu faces the challenge of leading a country deeply divided by the disputed vote and restoring confidence in its democratic institutions. The opposition party, Chadema, whose leader was barred from running, has rejected the results.
The UN's migration agency says tens of thousands of people have been trying to flee the city of Al Fasher in Sudan. This after the paramilitary rapid support forces seized it from the army over a week ago. Many are trying to reach Tawila, where aid agencies are offering help. Eyewitnesses say the RSF has killed some people, while others, especially young men suspected of belonging to the Sudanese army, have been captured and abused. The BBC's Barbara Plate-Asha reports.
The RSF leader spoke after mounting international outrage about reports of mass killings in Al Fasher, apparently documented by his paramilitary fighters in social media videos. He said he was sorry for the disaster that had befallen the people of Al Fasher and admitted there had been violations by his forces, which would be investigated by a committee that's now arrived in the city. The RSF denies widespread allegations that the killings in Al Fasher are ethnically motivated and follow a pattern of the Arab paramilitaries targeting non-Arab populations. Activists have also stepped up demands for international pressure on the United Arab Emirates, which is accused of providing military support to the RSF.
US President Donald Trump has played down the possibility of a US war with Venezuela, but suggested President Nicolas Maduro's days as the country's president are numbered. Trump made the remarks on CBS TV after the US military launched another strike on what it said are drug smuggling boats in the Caribbean. It's conducted more than a dozen such attacks so far. The US president has reiterated that Maduro won't be Venezuela's president for long, but appeared to deny that he is planning attacks inside Venezuela.
I would say, yeah. I think so, yeah. Don't tell you that. I mean, I'm not saying it's true or untrue, but, I wouldn't,
Why would
I
we
wouldn't
do
be
it?
inclined to say that I would do that. But because I don't talk to a reporter about whether or not I'm going to strike.
Recapping the top story this hour, following a two-day retreat on Johannesburg's outskirts, leaders of the 10 political parties constituting of South Africa's Government of National Unity have committed to prioritising key areas of focus. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In a sports headline, India defeated South Africa and cash in on the 2025 Women's ODI World Cup. And New York City Marathon 2025 Kenya winners earn $100 in prize money. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Ahoy, matey!
Captain here to help, right, boys?
Set sail with us on a digital voyage like no other. Channel Africa has a treasure trove of awesomeness. That is our website and social media pages.
Tell me, why are you here?
We want you to be part of our adventure.
The winds are changing, Captain. And this time...
Imagine a world where curiosity knows no bounds, where entertainment meets enlightenment, and where every click leads to the African perspective. Visit us on our website, www.channelafrica.co.za, or follow us on Instagram or on X at Channel Africa 1. Go on, like us on Facebook at Channel Africa 1. So, spread the word. Tell a friend that Channel Africa's online variety is what they need on the web. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
A very good afternoon to you, Kenya. Good afternoon, Ethiopia, Eritrea. Good afternoon to you, Ghana, Somalia, Eswatini. Good afternoon, Africa. Welcome to Africa in Business on Channel Africa. I'm Thami Ngubeni. This is where you get the African perspective. It's where we meet to look at the latest in news, sport and business. Coming up on your Monday agenda, a conversation from Kenya. Kenya has delayed the talks that were meant to take place between the country and the International Monetary Fund. You will remember we spoke about this quite extensively last week around a new funding program. Kenya a bit hesitant and undecided as to whether or not they will be entering a new IMF funding program. We'll be speaking to Alexander Riti, Head of Programs at the Institute for Social Accountability in Kenya. Also this afternoon, reports coming out of Tanzania, the food, fuel and cash shortages being reported. This is after the eruption of election protests. We'll be speaking to an associate professor at Stellenbosch University and Royal Danish Defence College regarding the state of affairs in Tanzania following the elections and consequent and subsequent protests. That and a whole lot more coming up on your Monday edition of Africa in Business. Welcome to it.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
Talks between Kenya and the International Monetary Fund for a new funding program have been delayed with no clear timelines or indication of a way forward. This amid reports that the East African country is undecided on whether to enter a new IMF funding program. These said delays stem from significant disagreements over the country's currency management and debt sustainability strategy. Meanwhile, the civic organizations have accused the government of exacerbating economic inequality and increasing national debt as a result of these IMF programs. For more on this, we are joined this afternoon by Alexander Riti, Head of Programs at the Institute for Social Accountability, that's TISA Kenya. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
So there seem to be some delays with Kenya finalizing the new IMF funding program. What would be the potential risks to ordinary citizens if Kenya delays or ultimately opts out of a new IMF deal? And I ask this especially in terms of service delivery, debt servicing, pressure, and even the tax burdens.
Well, thank you. The Kenyan government has actually pulled out of the 9th review of the IMF program earlier in the year, and now they've been trying to get back to a program. And what has happened since then, we've seen the government going into heavy domestic borrowing, and this domestic borrowing then means that we have government competing with private sector for limited resources within the economy. Effectively, this means that the private sector is not growing. We are losing jobs, and therefore the economy is on a slowdown. The hope is that if we were to get into this program, then there will be a reduction in the level of government operations in the private space, which would then leave enough resources for private sector to grow, therefore increasing the available jobs for ordinary Kenyans. We hope that this one is going to go through, but what we have had in our interactions with both the fund and from what we are hearing within, the fund has not gotten to a level where they are entering into a program. So we hope it goes through at some point to sort of reduce the pressure that is there. Already currently, the country does not have enough resources to take care of its own services. We have, like currently, lecturers are on strike, among many other pressing issues that we are facing as a country.
So should Kenya decide to go ahead and actually enter the new IMF-funded program, what challenges does this pose for the ordinary citizens of Kenya, especially in the context of austerity measures, constraints on expansion of social spending, etc.?
The challenges that we see, as you may be aware, when you have an IMF program, it is accompanied by some other fiscal policies. And this is what I would like to call debt-driven policies that include the levels of taxation. And the idea here is to, first of all, ensure that the economy is back on track. And then the fund is interested in ensuring that a country is able to raise resources that will pay back the loan. This comes with conditionalities such as austerity measures in areas that the government would consider a priority, and you're pushed into spending into areas that the fund would consider a priority for you. So what eventually would happen, we would see a situation where government expenditure moves from what citizens would be willing to have funded towards what the program would be forcing the government to spend on. Of course, there is the reverse effect where some of the proposals might end up introducing new tax measures to try and get funding for repaying the loans. For instance, the last program we saw it leading to an increase in VAT on fuel, which now ends up increasing the cost of living for the ordinary citizens.
So how would you prioritize spending and borrowing for Kenya in a way that supports poverty alleviation and long-term growth rather than patronage?
That's a very good question. In the Kenyan public financial infrastructure, the law actually provides that all borrowing should go towards development expenditure. This means that you are spending your money in areas that will see future growth prospects instead of spending on recurrent expenditure. So our hope is that the new program, if it were to come, then would adhere to just our own laws and ensure that we are spending our monies, especially the borrowed money, on areas that improve the livelihoods of citizens, if it's infrastructure or social spending on health care, education, and so on. That is more useful than recurrent spending within just ordinary normal government expenditure.
So a few weeks ago, Alexander, you wrote to the IMF accusing the government of Kenya of stoking poverty. What evidence do you have that suggests that the Kenyan government is actually not using the IMF loans to improve the lives of citizens?
Thank you. As you may recall, towards the end of last year, the civil society within the Kenyan space applied a lot of pressure on our government to ensure that we conduct what we call a governance and corruption diagnostic. And this led to the government applying to the IMF for that process to be conducted, because it was our view and still is that our economy is running the way it is running due to governance issues. And as you may be aware, the IMF has been conducting a governance and corruption diagnostic just to try and help the government identify the areas or loopholes of corruption where we lose our money. And that is the reasoning why we wrote to inform the IMF that our problem is not just economical, but it's more of a governance problem. And we cannot just sort the economic challenges that we have unless we sort out the governance issues that we are currently facing. We expect that report will be available by the end of this year. But beyond that, we have already conducted as civil society organizations in Kenya through Okoa Uchumi campaign, our own public audit of our governance and corruption situation in the country, similar to what the Sri Lankan government and civil society did. So we have our own process, and we'll be launching our report on the 25th of this month that shows from lived realities of from a Kenyan point of view, how are we doing as far as governance and corruption is concerned.
So what is your ask of the IMF? Are you asking them to, withdraw funds, not go ahead with the process? Are you asking for a change of government? What exactly do you want the IMF to do?
Our ask is that we cannot continue providing resources to the Kenyan government without asking for accountability in terms of how that money is spent. And that is why we are looking forward to the report that will come out of the governance and corruption diagnostic by the IMF, and we're also pushing for publication of that particular document once it comes out. But before then, we are also producing our own civil society, our own version of the same from our lived realities of Kenyans.
All right, Alexander, thank you so much for that update, and we'll certainly be keeping abreast of developments in Kenya as far as relations with the IMF are concerned. We thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's Alexander Riti, Head of Programs at the Institute for Social Accountability, that's TISA, Kenya, taking us to exactly 19 minutes after 4.
Ready to connect, innovate, and be inspired? It's all happening at Africa's Tech Festival, where Africa's technology meets the world. From the 10th to the 13th of November in Cape Town, join global leaders, investors, and innovators driving the future of Africa's digital economy. Don't miss the continent's biggest week in tech. Get your pass now at africatechfestival.com.
Africa means business. Tune into Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni for the future of the African economy. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is exactly 20 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Now, days following the disruptive elective process in Tanzania, there are reports of food, fuel and cash shortages. This is according to the UK High Commission. The embassy warned against travel to the country that has been rocked by unrest since last Wednesday following an election marred by violent protests and rejected by the opposition as a sham. Despite the election dispute, Samia Suluhu Hassan was sworn in for a second term on Monday amid tight security at the military parade grounds in the capital, Dodoma, in an event closed to the public but broadcast live by the state-run broadcaster. To speak to us about this, we joined this afternoon by Professor Thomas Madrup, an associate professor at Stellenbosch University and Royal Danish Defence College. A very good afternoon to you, Prof. Good to have you with us on Africa in Business.
Good afternoon to you and to the listeners. Thank you for having me.
So, Prof, what do you make of President Samia Suluhu Hassan proceeding with the swearing-in ceremony, especially in light of this unrest that's resulted in claims of food, fuel, as well as cash shortages?
I think she's trying to create some kind of stability and try to put lid on the situation. I guess she's been looking to what we've seen, for instance, in Mozambique a little less than a year ago, where you had a long, disputed period of time where the opposition claimed of election fraud and all that, and we saw violence in the street and violent protests and all that. And she tries to create some kind of stability to get some kind of normalcy to the situation. The problem with this, of course, is that this election has been a scam, basically, and it's been. She has limited legitimacy because of the banning of the opposition, not participating properly in the election, and opposition figures being imprisoned, and all the increasingly authoritarian tendencies we've seen happening in Tanzania for the last 1.5 to 2 years. And so the question is whether this attack by her be enough to stabilize the situation.
And that's the question that I really want to delve deeper into. Yes, fine. The confirmation of her as president, the swearing-in ceremony that has taken place, but we're also seeing that colleges, schools, public transport systems have all but shut down in the country. We're also seeing that some essential good prices have more than doubled. What are the immediate steps that should be taken, that could be taken in order to stabilize the economy and also then to prevent a full-scale humanitarian crisis?
Yeah, but the problem right now is because of the disruptions and because of the protests and the situation, of course, risk going totally out of hand. We've seen these Gen Zs over demonstrations all over the world. We saw it in Madagascar recently as well. We've seen it in Angola, other places. So she needs to start some kind of dialogue and try to stabilize the situation and try to find some way to get the parties, especially with the opposition, get them to talk to each other, to talk to the opposition again. The problem right now is, as you mentioned, that the logistical change has been closed down. At the harbor, the port has been closed down. Which makes it, of course, that it's quite difficult to get the economy and especially the provision of food and foodstuffs up and going as long as the situation continues with this level of instability we've seen recently. Apart from the atrocities committed by the security forces against the protesters, and all that, it's not a sustainable solution that you need to deploy your military to the streets. You need to find some kind of solution to stabilize what's going on at the moment, and that is the questioning.
Will diplomacy be the way to go? Chadema has rejected the official election results and alleges that no genuine election actually took place. So you've mentioned that this then bodes as a contention for legitimacy of this administration. What are the mechanisms that can be put in place, whether domestic or international, that can be actioned in order to verify or, on the other hand, to challenge the legitimacy of the election process?
Yeah, I think that first of all, there's been a widespread critique of the election itself from international observers, the EU, and all that. And I think it could be a good step if the African Union and maybe also SADC, the Southern African Development Communities, went out and criticized for once and say this process is not legitimate, because then you could say we cannot accept what we've seen and we cannot accept what has been going on, and we need to have some kind of dialogue in a transitional period of time or whatever to make sure that this happens. This is not very likely to happen. What's very much likely to happen is that we already seen, for instance, the Zimbabwean president congratulating Tanzania's president on the re-election, and most likely we're going to see, in the sake of stabilization, that will happen. And then we will have to see whether the steam of these protests runs out, like we saw in Mozambique, or whether the opposition and the general public are so tired of what's been going on in Tanzania that they will continue and put pressure, because it is for the CCM governing party, this is a existential issue. We saw what can happen in Madagascar just a couple of weeks ago, where the president has been forced out, and this could happen again here if need be, if she's not careful.
All right, Professor Thomas Mandrup, thank you so much for your insight here. We'll have to see, as you mentioned, how the regional and even international bodies react, if they do, and how the locals will continue putting pressure, and for how long. We thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. That's Professor Thomas Mandrup, an associate professor at Stellenbosch University and Royal Danish Defence College, taking us to exactly 27 minutes after 4.
From markets to innovation, Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus, Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Turning our focus now to South Africa, where summer grain and oilseed farmers had an excellent season. That is, of course, according to Wandile Sehlobo, chief economist at the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa. The latest report from the Crop Estimate Committee, released this afternoon, shows that the country's 2024 to 2025 harvest is now expected to reach just over 20 million tonnes. Now, that's a 1% increase from last month's estimate. The total includes crops such as maize, soybeans, sunflower seeds, ground nuts, sorghum and dry beans. Here is Wandile Sehlobo, the chief economist of the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa.
In the 2024-25 production season, South Africa had one of the excellent summer grain and oilseeds harvest. In fact, at the end of October, the Crop Estimate Committee, which is the body of researchers in government and in private sector and academia that sit together and observe the crop growing conditions across the country, they released an estimate at the end of October, lifting their production size from what we had at the end of September and saying, look, this time around now we have a crop of about 20 million tons. This is up 30% compared to what we harvested in the previous season. And of course, in the basket of this crop, we have maize, soybeans, sunflower, sorghum, groundnuts, and dry beans, amongst other crops. And maize, which is South Africa's staple grain, we have a harvest of about 16.3 million tons, up 28% from what we harvested the previous season. And this means then that South Africa will remain a net exporter in summer grains and oilseeds. And it also means that for a consumer perspective, we are likely to remain with reasonably lower grain-related food products prices for quite some time going into next year. What is also encouraging is that for the 2025-26 production season, the farmers are already starting to till the land across the country. And when we look at the weather outlook is as positive, suggesting that we may be in another year of La Nina rainfall. And remember, we have an excellent crop in the 2024-25 production season because of the La Nina rains, and it looks like it will be a continuation of that. And the farmers are eager to plant. They say they will plant about 4.5 million hectares, which is up 1% from the area that they planted in the season that we are ending of that big crop of 20 million tons. So really an excellent season in South Africa's grains and oilseeds production. We're looking to another excellent season ahead, and we're already starting to receive these rainfalls.
That was Wandile Sihlobo, the chief economist of the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa, taking us to exactly 4:30 p.m. Central African time as we head over now to the markets desk, where Nosipho Zuma is standing by with the latest market indicators.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good afternoon. In your business indicators this hour, $1 is trading at 17 rand 31 in South Africa. In Botswana is trading at 13 Bula 70. In Namibia, it is trading at 17 Namibian dollars 313. The Zambian kwacha is trading at 22 kwacha 08 to the US dollar. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 2. In Ethiopia, it is trading at 152 birr 99. In Uganda, it is trading at 3,000 shilling 463. In Tanzania, it is trading at 2,000 shilling 461. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 436. In Egypt, the dollar is trading at 47 Egyptian pound 219. In Tunisia, it is trading at 2 dinar 937. In Algeria, it is trading at 129 dir 836. In Morocco, the dollar will cost you 9 dirham 276. In Angola, the dollar is trading at 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is trading at 2,220 to the US dollar. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $4,018 and platinum at $1,584 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $64.78 a barrel. Now, for any business news stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipho Zuma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
For the latest from the business of sport, here is Figile Lingwate.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Thami. And in our business of sport, we begin with the cricket news. India defeated South Africa by 52 runs to win the 2025 Women's ODI World Cup at D.I. Patel Stadium in India. And they received $4.48 million as prize money from a total pool of $13.88 million. South Africa, who finished as the runners-up, received $2.24 million. The total prize money pool for the 2025 edition of the Women's World Cup is a $13.88 million. It is also 4 times more than 2022 edition in New Zealand, where the prize pool was $3.5 million. Interestingly, it has also surpassed the prize pool of the 2023 Men's Cricket World Cup, which was $10 million. Now on to tennis news. Jannik Sinner's win in Paris earned him a hefty $1 million, while Auger Aliassime took $596,000. The 24-year-old Italian recently lifted himself onto one of tennis' most exclusive clubs. Sinner joins tennis' richest club. The 24-year-old recently is now in the most exclusive club with crossing $50 million milestone in career prize money after winning the ATP 500 title in Vienna. The victory earned him 500 ranking points and a winner's check that pushed him total career earnings to $50 million. Before the tournament, Sinner's on-court earnings stood at $49 million. With this win, he becomes only the 8th player across ATP and WTA history to surpass a $50 million mark. He's also just the 2nd player born in the 2000s to achieve the feat, following Carlos Alcaraz, who reached the figure earlier this year after the US Open. Still with tennis news, Canadian tennis ace Victoria Mbogo's promising young career has continued with the first WTA 250 title as she defeated Christian Buxam. Mbogo has earned some more prize money, with $36,300 being given to the champion. That sees her overall prize money tally rise to $1,500,000. For Buxa, she earned $21,484 for finishing runner-up, which puts the 27-year-old's tally at $4 million. We look at the marathon. In a thrilling sprint finish, Kenyan Benson Kipruto won the men's pro race at the 2025 New York City Marathon over countryman Alexander Motiso. The two men crossed simultaneously. Kipruto was declared the winner by a fraction of a second, walking away with the top prize of $100,000. Motiso will take home $60,000. Albert Korir, also of Kenya, wraps up the podium, finished 3rd, and he earned $40,000 for his run on Sunday. The women's pro race saw a similarly exciting finish, with Kenyan Helen Obiri crossed the line first, outlasted countrywoman Sharon Lokedi. Obiri, who is sponsored by On Running and trains in Boulder, Kolo, with their own athletics, will take home $100,000 for her win, plus a bonus $50,000 for the course record. Lokedi, sponsored by Under Armour, earns $60,000 for second, and Chip Karui, running for Adidas, gets $40,000. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
It is exactly 36 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Still coming up for you this afternoon, our usual FNB slot. And we'll be talking to senior economist at FNB, Siphamandla Mkhwanazi, looking at the week ahead, as well as the producer inflation and private sector credit extension data for September, also due to be released soon. That and a whole lot more coming up. But first up, since taking office in the year 2018, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has pursued a sweeping economic liberalization agenda to position the country among Africa's fastest growing economies. While these reforms have sparked optimism for a new era of business growth, entrepreneurship remains widely misunderstood. The key question now is, can Ethiopia's economic reforms translate into a jobs boom? Our economics reporter Innocent Simosa has more.
Ethiopia has undergone significant economic liberation under Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, from opening its banking and telecom sector to floating the beer. How sustainable are these reforms in the face of inflationary pressure and ongoing security concerns? Political economist Progress Palsprims shares his perspective.
Well, Ethiopia's economic reforms supposedly tailored to be sustainable, especially looking at the rising inflation and the security challenges. But now there is an existential threat in terms of it being sustainable, which is essentially the loans that they've gotten in the past that still needs to be fleshed out. And it looks like the runway, particularly when it comes to them remaining sustainable at the same time dealing with their rising inflation and their security challenges, is actually something that is coming to an end. Most likely, if they opt to also include the multilateral lending that is coming from China and expand it, particularly when it comes to the manufacturing sector, the textiles, and some similar sectors that the Chinese might actually be interested in. In fact, I would have wanted them to actually go into China processing their rare earths minerals. Then you'll find out that their economic reforms would have actually turned out to be sustainable.
The IMF projects Ethiopia's economy will grow by over 7% in 2025, yet job creation remains a major concern. Palsprims shares some policy interventions or reforms that are most urgent to translate this growth into meaningful employment opportunities, especially for young people.
Well, regarding whether Ethiopia can turn strong economic growth into real jobs for its young population, again, it is premised on whether they are going to really transform their economy. And in this case, I mean, have new jobs added, new industries added, things like artificial intelligence and data centers and the like, where you can actually just have new jobs that are added that have never been within the economy as we speak right now. So that means it can absorb the young population and then give them new kind of jobs. They have tried with some initiatives. For example, they have tried to have their people learn how to do coding, but it was only from the UAE. And in this case, I think they should actually extend themselves to the Chinese are pretty good at that. The Indians are pretty good at that. The Russians are pretty good at that. In fact, when it comes to engineering and manufacturing as well, they can actually go to the Russians, especially if they're aiming to get to a point where they become self-sustainable in terms of producing their own products by themselves with their own engineers, their own scientists.
He says Ethiopia's new Startup Act and the 5 Million Coders initiative are meant to drive digital innovation, but for now, that vision remains a distant goal.
Well, this is actually just a pipe dream at the moment. I say so because you're looking at a case where the country itself, when you look at their gross mental attitude, whether they can actually uptake startups and they can also monetize startups. I don't think you can compare Ethiopia to their region, let's say to a country like Israel. You can compare them in terms of how they lap up startups and they can really monetize it, get initial public offerings on the base of their startups.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samos in Johannesburg.
It is exactly 4:41 Central African time as we turn our focus now to the Western Cape province in South Africa. The province is set to launch its inaugural Western Cape Investment Summit, which will take place at the Cape Town International Convention Centre from the 5th to the 7th of November. Now, the summit seeks to connect investors with high potential opportunities in the region's priority sectors, including renewable energy, technology and tourism. The Premier of the Western Cape, Alan Winde, says the event will showcase the very best of what the province has to offer. For more on this, we're joined on the line by Dr. Ivan Meyer, the Western Cape Province's member of the Executive Council, the MEC of Agriculture, Economic Development and Tourism. MEC, welcome. Good to have you with us on Africa in Business.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity.
So what specific outcomes does the Western Cape government aim to achieve with this inaugural investment summit? And, the Western Cape being such a buzz and such a hub for productivity, one wonders why this hasn't happened earlier.
Well, the Western Cape government has adopted a growth for job strategy. In terms of this growth for job strategy, we want to grow the economy at about a 3% GDP. in order for this to happen, we need to be very focused. We have, for example, a number of strategic priority areas. Number one, for example, is to attract foreign direct investment. And so far, it is important to grow the economy. You need three things. You need investor confidence, you need business confidence, and you need consumer confidence. And we are hosting this particular investment summit in cooperation with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange to attract necessary investments to grow the economy in the Western Cape.
And how many investment-ready projects will be showcased at the summit? And what stage of readiness do they need to be in order to qualify?
Well, I'm very happy you asked that particular question because there are different types of investment summit. We have decided that this will not be a talk shop investment summit. This will be investment-ready summit. We have about 200 projects that are investment ready. In other words, it's bankable projects. And these projects have been vetted by the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. I have launched the Western Cape Investment Summit at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange in Gauteng. And so they have helped us to make sure that the projects that we have for the investment summit are credible, bankable, and really implementable projects that is ready to run as soon as we sign those deals.
And what are your priority sectors that you've selected?
Well, we have identified a number of very critical sectors. For us, we have, for example, the agricultural sector, the agri-processing sector. We have also a number of smart promotion activities, the digital technology. For us, these are very important, but more important for us here in the Western Cape is also the green economy. The manufacturing, tourism is big here in the Western Cape, but also for investment, the property industry, creative industries, logistics is very big here in the Western Cape. Also for us, we see a huge growth in infrastructure projects, but also lifestyle projects. So these are the type of projects that we will be showcasing that is ready for investment, and particularly given what has happened in South Africa over the last 15 years, we want major investment in water infrastructure and in energy infrastructure projects.
And how will rural and regional projects be included and given visibility? You know, the type of projects that still need a lot of support and perhaps even incubation, this to ensure that the benefits are broadly distributed.
I'm very happy that you asked that question, because for us, we believe that this must also promote one of the values of this government, namely inclusiveness. And for that particular reason, we have partners with the district municipalities and the rural municipalities, because we want to deal with poverty specifically in the rural areas, specifically in areas, the specific focus is energy for rural areas, job creation projects for rural areas, water and stormwater infrastructure projects, agri-processing plants. So these are specifically targeted also for the rural communities. While agriculture in the Western Cape is mainly a rural business, so those areas, in the rural areas, we have prepared district municipalities, rural municipalities, in cooperation with SALGA, to get projects from the rural areas so that the rural communities can also benefit from this investment summit. I stated it from the beginning. I'm not the minister of the Cape. I'm the minister of the Western Cape, and everybody must benefit from this.
So you mentioned earlier on that this mustn't be a summit as usual, that it mustn't be just a talk shop. How are you going to ensure that there's sustainability in the achievements of this particular summit? How are you going to ensure that momentum will be maintained so that this isn't just a once-off event, but really part of an ongoing investment ecosystem in the province?
I'm very happy that you speak about an investment ecosystem, because 14 days after this investment summit, I will have a debriefing. I will also look at the Western Cape infrastructure implementation strategy. The Western Cape Minister of Infrastructure has also launched a deal book to look at the investment-ready projects. We will also go to the Western Cape Cabinet and assess what was the impact of this investment summit together with our Western Cape Minister of Finance. So for us, this is very important. I will also every 6 months give a report to the Western Cape Cabinet what has happened, because we will not have another investment summit unless this one is a huge success. And I have no doubt that this will be a major success, because we have also global companies that have shown an interest, and there are many more people that want to come and invest, and we set the benchmark 50 million rand and up for investment before you can come to this investment seminar.
Well, you're not joking. Wishing you all the best with the outcomes of this particular summit. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. We're not making any jokes. We are determined to root out poverty in the rural areas.
Dr. Ivan Meyer, we thank you for your time. He is the Western Cape Province's MEC. That's the member of the Executive Council of Agriculture, Economic Development and Tourism on the upcoming inaugural Western Cape Investment Summit. It's taking place at the CTICC, which is the Cape Town International Convention Centre, from the 5th to the 7th of November.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio. But sadly, they do not guarantee that you'll be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Nkhanza zokhudza amuna ndi azimayi kapena kuti gender-based violence GBV zikuwononga mioyo komanso kuphwasula midzi. Zikuchitika m'manyumba, m'masukulu, malo ogwirira ntchito, ndipo kwambiri mwakachetechete. Koma sizikuyenera kupitirira. Mukazimva yankhulani. Ngati mwakhuzidwa, funani chithandizo. Chifukwa kusachita chilichonse sikuthandiza. Mverani kuma wireless onse 14 a SABC kuchokera lachitatu pa 23 mwezi uno wa Julai kuti mumve zokambirana, malangizo, masewero, zionetsero za maphunziro ndi mafunso okhuza nkhanza za amuna ndi azimayi ndi akatswiri, anthu opulumuka ku nkhanzazi, kukhazikitsa lamulo komanso dziko lonse lokhuzidwa ndi nkhanzazi. Zonsezi pa wireless yomwe mumayikonda ya SABC. Imbirani pa nambala 0800 428 428 kuti munene za nkhanzazi kapena kupeza chithandizo. Nkhanza zokhuza amuna ndi azimayi zimatha ndi inu. Uthenga ukufikani kuchokera ku SABC.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It is exactly 4:51 Central African time. In just a moment, we'll be speaking to FNB's Siphamandla Mkhwanazi. And this afternoon, we'll be looking at what we ought to be expecting from the South African Reserve Bank's last rate announcement for the year. And this is going to be taking place next month. Also, just a quick recap of what we brought for you today. Controversy still surrounds the election of Tanzania's latest president. And that has been marred by protests, also marred by a decline in availability of essential foodstuffs, including fuel. We'll continue to keep abreast of developments in Tanzania. Many have called this election a sham. Will there be any reaction from international bodies or regional bodies? Will SADC come out and make a statement regarding this? We await on that. Also, Kenya has paused its talks with the IMF. This is around a new funding program. We spoke this afternoon to Alexander Riti. He is head of programs at the Institute for Social Accountability in Kenya. Now, he, along with the organization, had written a letter to the IMF accusing the Kenyan government of not using the funds in a way that is beneficial for the country, saying that Kenya is exacerbating and fueling poverty by utilizing these funds in a way that does not drive infrastructure growth and the prevention of poverty. Those are just some of the programs that we brought in store for you today. Looking forward to hearing what your thoughts are, what your views are, especially if you are in the countries concerned, the countries that we focused on today. What is your experience on the ground? You'll find us on X, Instagram and YouTube at Channel Africa 1, and on Facebook you'll find us at Channel Africa.
Stay tuned to Channel Africa. Stream us on our new and updated website, channelafrica.co.za. Africa, it's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K
or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Tamo ndi
Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. And join the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa means business. Tune into Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni for the future of the African economy. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is exactly 4:54 Central African time. In this week's slot with First National Bank, we look at what to expect from the SARS last rate announcement for the year 2025 as the spotlight falls on South African businesses with the release of the private sector credit extension data for September. We also find out what this means for the local businesses. To discuss this further, we're joined by senior economist at FNB, Siphamandla Mkhwanazi. A very good afternoon to you, sir. Good to be chatting to you once again.
Good to be chatting to you. Good afternoon to your viewers.
So before we head into the week to come, we saw inflation coming in at 3.4% last week. The South African Reserve Bank also released their monetary policy review. Any indication of what next month's rate announcement could be?
Yeah, no, I know a lot of us would want to get an early Christmas gift. But I think we are not yet at a stage where we can continue with the interest rate cutting cycle that we had embarked on since last year. However, things are looking up relatively well, Thami. If you look at inflation expectations coming down relatively nicely, if you look at inflation surprise slightly to the downside, particularly that food component. So a lot of these indicators that the Reserve Bank was fearful of that they might have that upward pressure on inflation are actually coming out better than initially anticipated. So the environment is ripe for a further interest rate cut. However, just not yet. I think the Reserve Bank will want to see the impact of their past interest rate decisions, assess the impact of their past interest rate decisions before they can decide on their way forward.
Well, let's take a look at a couple of releases that we are expecting this week. There's a producer inflation that's going to be released. Your expectations there? Another acceleration, perhaps?
Slight acceleration in producer inflation. One component that is going to be key, in fact, two components that are key in the producer inflation in the PPI are the food component as well as the fuel component. Now, those two items tend to be volatile, and they, strike directly into the pocket of the consumer. So it starts with the producer, it goes to the retailer, and to my and your pocket, Thami. So this is an early indicator of what things are going to look like in the next couple of months.
There's also the private sector credit extension data for September, which will be released. How are things looking for South African businesses?
So we are seeing two different economies there, Thami. There is a corporate economy and there is a household economy. From a corporate perspective, that's what has been driving demand for credit. We are seeing, corporates taking up credit to buy moving equipment, cars. They are taking up credit to buy, or rather to expand their asset base. So mortgages are doing relatively well, and the investment investment drive is also picking up pace. So those general loans and advances are also doing relatively well. So at the moment, demand for credit sets within the corporate space. Now, when you look at households, household credit is somewhere around your 2%, far below inflation, suggesting that both lenders as well as households, there's a little bit of restraint from both parties at the moment, which is not surprising, given the fact that we are coming from a very painful cost of living crisis. So that is still fresh in the minds of consumers, at least. So they are, they're acting with a bit of restraint when it comes to credit at the moment, despite the fact that interest rates or borrowing costs are lower.
Siphamandla Mkhwanazi, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's senior economist at FNB, Siphamandla Mkhwanazi, bringing us to exactly 4:58 Central African Time. We say bonjour to you, Annika Longi.
Bonjour Thami, bonjour à tous les auditeurs de Channel Africa. Alors tout à l'heure sur Vue d'Afrique, nous parlerons de la prestation des serments de la présidente de la Tanzanie, Samia Suluhu, sur fond de contestation sur sa victoire. Nous irons également au Cameroun où la première journée ville morte a été appelée ce lundi par Issa Chiroma Bakari. Et en fait, pour les grands titres, à Bissau, les autorités annoncent avoir déjoué une tentative de coup d'État avant le début de la campagne électorale. C'est tout à l'heure sur Vue d'Afrique. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. And that's how we as Africa in Business come to the end of your Monday edition. From myself, Thami Ngubeni, and the entire team, you have yourself a splendid afternoon further as we hand the reins over now to the French desk and Vue d'Afrique. Restez connectés.